Ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for us to welcome the fifth speaker. Shinko Bazan from Nara Women's University will deliver the speech under the title of Should We Really Have to Learn English? Should We Really Have to Learn English? Shinko Bazan, please come up to the center of the stage.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, honorable judges, and all the audience here today. Probably you're all wondering, what is this white girl doing here? Well, let me clarify something from the start. I'm from Spain, and just like Japanese students, I had to learn English as a foreign language throughout my school years. In fact, when I first started learning Japanese, my English wasn't strong enough to rely on English resources. So I had to make do with a few Spanish materials available. But as I reached a high level in Japanese, I found myself needing more advanced resources, most of which were in English. So in order to learn Japanese, I also had to improve my English. To be able to come to study in Japan, I worked as a barista for several years. There, I had to serve many foreign customers, most of which didn't speak Spanish or even Catalan, the local language of my region. So I had to use English. And I was proud of that. I looked down on my coworkers who struggled to communicate, who had to rely on hand gestures, basic Spanish words, or broken English to get by. But now, I see things very differently. Maybe I was the one who was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have looked down on them. Why? Because even though we always say that tourism fits Barcelona, those foreigners who came to my cafe weren't just bringing money. They were also slowly taking over my city. We always say tourism fits Barcelona, but isn't it also consuming it? Let me ask you, how much do you think is the average rent in Barcelona right now? For young locals, it's impossible to afford. Why? Because property owners make more money by renting to wealthy tourists from richer countries. And what about the cafes, like the one where I work? Why were there so many tourists? Well, that's because locals couldn't afford to go there to have coffee anymore. And what was I doing by speaking English? I was welcoming them in. I was letting them think, oh, Barcelona is amazing. It's so easy to get by because everyone speaks English. And that brings me to Japan. What is one of the biggest complaints foreigners have about Japan? It's not the food, the safety, the culture, or the quality of life. No, it's that Japanese people don't speak English. But imagine if that changed. Imagine if suddenly every Japanese person spoke English fluently. Wouldn't that make it more accessible? Wouldn't that make it like the perfect tourist destination? Wouldn't that bring even more foreigners who come here not to integrate but to simply enjoy Japan as a cheap paradise without ever needing to understand the people who live here? With the yen's recent devaluation, we are already seeing this happen. Foreigners from richer countries are coming here and treating Japan like a theme park without thinking about the impact they have on local communities. I've seen posts on social media where people say, the only thing stopping me from moving to Japan is that people don't speak English. So what? This is Japan. Of course people speak Japanese. Isn't it absurd to expect an entire country to change just to accommodate foreigners? But this is already happening in Spain. More and more foreigners are moving there because it's cheap while working remote jobs with higher foreign salaries. And locals, they are being pushed out, just like I was. I moved here not only because I love Japan, but because I was afraid of living in a country where my own language and culture are slowly being replaced by English. And let's be honest, we are all here because we love English. We've worked hard to learn it, and we're not afraid of learning new languages. But that's a key difference. We make the effort. We cannot justify refusing to learn the local language just because we can get by with English. In my region, Catalonia, the local language Catalan has been slowly disappearing. Not because people don't speak it, but because everyone also speaks Spanish fluently, making it easier for newcomers to avoid learning Catalan. It is in such a fragile state that the government has to implement language protection policies just to keep it alive. And now, it seems like the next step is Spanish itself being replaced by English. Of course, learning English brings incredible benefits. I will always encourage people to learn it. In fact, I teach English to high school students, and I insist on how important it is for their future. But we cannot let our societies be consumed by English. we cannot let Japan fall into the same trap my country did. Being bilingual in your own country is not the blessing people think it is. I was raised bilingual, but not in some ideal multicultural way, but because of Spanish imposition. I grew up speaking both Spanish and Catalan, not as a choice, but as a consequence of Spanish imposition. It wasn't a gift. It was a tool of erasure of culture and the language of my ancestors. And now I see history repeating itself with English. And let me add something. I am fluent in 4 languages, and I am currently learning a 5th. Ironically, probably the one I speak the worst is English, but still, I learn it, just like everyone here. Because learning a new language is something beautiful. It opens doors, it expands our world, and it connects us to others. But it should never come at the cost of losing our own identities, our own cultures, and our own languages. So, should we really have to learn English? Yes, but not at the cost of who we are. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Shinko Bazan. Then we will have a question and answer session. Dr. Sasayama, please.
All right, thank you very much, Shinko. I think your speech gave us a lot of things to think about, and I'm curious to hear your ideas on the questions I have. So when it comes to tourism and language, what does an ideal scenario look like for you?
I think the current situation in Japan is quite good. Like, I feel like a lot of criticism foreigners have when they come here is like, oh, Japan is not a country where everyone speaks English. You have to use machines to translate, and maybe you have to rely on your phone. I think the current situation that we have many tools that help with machine translation, and I've seen, I live in Nara where it's quite touristy. So in my own station, I see every day people who are using that station struggling with speaking to English. But I don't know if it's on everywhere in Japan, but at least in Kansai, I've seen that there's they're in stations they are using these machines. I thought it was it's something invented in Japan, like these machines that they have to translate automatically. So I think that's a good thing. And having trouble going to another country and being troubled, but the fact that they don't speak the same language is something good. It's something like, oh, this is a different country, I'm a guest here. So I think the situation right now is good, so we shouldn't be pushing to more learning English. In some sense, to be in going abroad, but I feel we're you guys are in Japan, you shouldn't be pressured to have a super high level of English ever at just a certain point.
Okay, thank you. So in your opinion, it's better for tourists to have to use translation apps than, us learning English and giving them hospitality?
Yeah, hospitality is fine, as we had in some speeches before. I think speaking to that person's native language is good, but we have to bear in mind that not everyone who are coming here is a native English speaker. I'm usually because I'm white, I'm sometimes thought of oh, she's a native English speaker, but it's not it's not my first language or anything. So what should this hospitality be coming from being spoken in English? I feel okay, maybe Catalan, but I'm not expecting you to be able to speak Catalan if I'm not in my country.
So do you think for tourists, they should be encouraged to learn Japanese if they're here?
Tourism is something for a week, so I don't think you should, but to a certain point, saying thank you. But no, I don't when people visit me here, I don't expect them to not even to say thank you in Japanese. I feel okay, you're visiting, it's all right. But there's nowadays there are certain tools to overcome this problem with communication. So I think that's right.
Okay, so it sounds like your solution to this problem is using translation apps. Is that?
To a certain point, okay. Yeah, or gestures, or because tourism in Japan was being done before these things were introduced. Right. People were coming here and communicating in some extent. So not as all of it. Yeah, it's something that it could be helpful.
Okay, sounds good. So let's talk about Catalan a little bit.
Yeah.
So what does the government do to preserve the local language Catalan?
So,
Sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I like people that are not familiar with it. Like, they are sometimes surprised, but like, we have everything in school is in Catalan, and that's a way of teaching like people who in their households they speak or Spanish or other languages to be able to be immersed in society. But aside from that, to have like to be like a doctor or something, there's like Catalan tests and stuff, and you have to be able to speak Catalan. So that like the doctors things is like something that recently has been like changing, and like they're accepting people who are not, and that's being a debate in Spain as well. But yeah, that's like having proof to be like public worker or something to have these certifications that you are able to speak Catalan is something that they are trying to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sasayama. Mr. Comfort, please.
Thank you very much for that speech, Shinko. The first thing I need to do is I just need a little bit more clarification about this line between tourists and I guess residents, foreign residents that come in. Can you draw that line a little more clearly for me, please?
Look, I've been thinking about this like a lot. Like, I think like, yeah, of course, residents here should be learning the language of the country. Like, I think in Spain, like there are like a lot of people who are coming and just speaking English, and that's just fine. But I feel like I have many friends here that it's like their first year living in Japan, and I'm not expecting them to come here and have a perfect Japanese ability from the very first day. But I think that if you want to integrate here, I think it's necessary thing, or at least not being expecting Japanese people to speak you in English or to welcome you just because like you're the one who should be doing the effort to learn the language of the country you're like is welcoming you. So yeah, I think that's a difference. Like not maybe the first year, not the first months, but like yeah, as the people are living here.
You said something really interesting right there. The people that need to integrate. Something that you talked about in here was actually people coming to a place and not integrating. Do you have the same issue with that as you do with those who I guess that's the end of the question, actually. Do you have the same issue with those who come in and have no intention of integrating? They're living in the place, they're using it as an office overseas in a way.
To a certain point, I would say, but like I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna pretend like I don't have friends here in Japan who don't speak Japanese at all, but I have my opinions about that, but like that's not gonna be me, like especially because I'm able to speak other languages and I have ways to communicate. But just like I think the motive of my speech is like I feel Japanese people shouldn't be worried themselves that they don't have enough English level because you're in your country, so you should be able to use your own language. And as I would like to be able to use my own language in my country, like in Catalonia, I would like to be able to speak Catalan in all the moments. I should be able as my native language and the language of that region. That's not something that's usually protected.
That's a really good clarification, and it opens up the door for my last and the question that I'm most interested in. I'm curious about how you view the relationship between language and culture. That's really what's at the heart of your speech, is this very tight relationship. Can you articulate as simply as you can how you see that relationship and why you think that a loss of language will equal a loss of culture?
Yes, thank you for like seeing the main point of my speech. I also agree that's like what I try to convey with this speech today. I think like in Catalonia, because Catalan is in this difficult situation right now, but like as I said before, in schools, everything is taught in Catalan. They are also trying to tie this connection between culture and trying not only teach us the language, but teach us that this the language itself is culture, and that if we lose that language, we will also lose our culture. Of course, like usual examples could be like expressions and things like that. Maybe between Spanish and Catalan, there's not that many expressions. Like there are some, of course, but I feel like, for example, the difference between Japanese and English is huge, and like not knowing the language here also really puts a barrier to understand the culture here and to understand how things are done here.
Thank you very much for your response.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Comfer. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Sasayama, Mr. Comfer, and Shinko Bazan.